The topic of Indian mounds and pyramids in America is so broad now, and like I've stated before, there are plenty of great channels on this platform and others providing clues, asking questions, and suggesting opinions. I've mentioned Bill Cooper before because even he discusses this. My take on things and the information I come across and how I present it is my opinion only. I will do my best to provide the website from where I find my information. And with that being said, let's get started. The Indian mounds have been here longer than we've been told, and even though the science of archaeology has shaped a specific narrative surrounding these mounds, while their purpose and how they were built remains elusive, seems like an oxymoron. There's so much information on nothing significant, yet no real information on anything of value. So keeping that in mind, it may be necessary for me to jump around a bit regarding the topic of the mounds. I had initially started by going from mound to mound, but as I have come across more articles, I find it necessary to deviate from that topic because all of this information ties in together, and I hope you understand that. The Library of Congress is a great place to start any research, at least to get the idea of the mind conditioning narrative they'd like for us to follow. There have been many topics about the mounds in the old newspaper articles I've read, some of them dating back all the way to the early 1800s, ranging from using the mounds for higher ground during floods, to performing rituals on a citywide scale, forming a group of men who dressed in robes and hoods to conceal their identity. Indeed, there are plenty of stories, legends, and myths surrounding the mounds. I find it'll probably be the easiest to thumb through these articles by the years. So the first year they alleged the Indian mounds were noted in the newspapers was 1811, and this is noted from the Mercury and the Alexandria Gazette, and the correspondence was between a Mr. Foster and a Mr. DeVos, where the mounds are described as a level summit of a high hill surrounded by a stone wall and located within the area where were about 30 furnaces described as blacksmith forges. I wonder why the furnaces. It's also depicted as a circular fort with 10 gates equally spaced with a well encased in stone. Further on, it explains the oddity of the stones used around these mounds because they could not be located within a mile of the ruins, which leads to the question of how the stone was moved there. It goes on to describe ruins of a city located below the mounds or at the base of them. And Mr. Foster, for whatever reason, wants us to believe just by looking at the mounds that it was the residence of a warlike race. How could he have known that? I'd like to know. An excerpt from the Edwardsville Spectator, dated June 5, 1819, draws the parallels between the Mississippi River Valley Indian mounds and Egypt. In another article from the Delaware Journal, dated August 31st, 1827, and allow me to quote here, quote, "There are many interesting mounds near St. Louis. Some of them have the aspect of being enormous stacks. That one of them is called the Falling Garden is generally pointed out as a striking curiosity. One of the mounds, a very impressive one, was leveled in the center of Chilcote. In digging it down, it said there were removed great quantities of human bones, close quote. And when I searched for the Falling Garden near St. Louis, this is what I found. I wonder if the Japanese garden mentioned here is located near St. Louis, which consists of 14 acres, is the Falling Garden of the 1827 article. This same article goes on to say that the town of Circleville is principally laid out within the limits of a couple of contiguous mounds, the one circular and the other in the form of a square. The most numerous and interesting groups of mounds, they allege, are located near the largest mound in the United States, Cahokia. Supposedly, there are over 200 mounds in this region alone. So moving on to the 1830s time frame, the Martinsburg Gazette, dated March 3, 1831, alludes to an extract or excerpt from Kercheval's History of the Valley. And what he notes about the Indian Mounds is that they're filled with human skeletons, bones of all sizes, along with artifacts of weaponry, pottery, and utensils. And it also alludes to the fact that the mounds were much taller prior to being plundered. He also describes unusual Indian graves, quote, and their form is nearly oblong square, whereas all others are circular and covered with stones, close quote. Interestingly, he also points out the Indian settlements being confined to watercourses or rivers, and instead of attending church, the Indians assembled once a year at the Feast of the New Corn. They extinguished all their fires, with the smoke ascending to the Great Spirit as a grateful sacrifice, close quote. So I think I'm going to end with this quote from this article here. Quote, if those mounds had been permitted to remain undisturbed, they would have stood as lasting monuments in the history of our country, close quote. And we can see how they've kept the truth buried, literally. From most of the articles I've read, it's obvious the mounds were more openly discussed back then, as opposed to now. I'm stopping here for time purposes, but know that we're just beginning to scratch the surface on the mounds, and that is figuratively speaking, of course. It's that time of year again. We're getting ready for spring. I thought I'd show you some of the other things we get busy doing. We've got our strawberries in, which I'm so excited about. It grows really well here. We also have our butter crunch lettuce that we started from seed, and we're starting to get our carrots in. The chives are looking really good. And last, we have some of our gladioles getting ready or just peeking up, just coming in. So there's plenty more to get planted. I hope you all enjoy your weekend, and thanks for watching.